The roar shattered the midday quiet, a monstrous sound tearing through the peaceful park like a physical blow. A sleek, custom motorcycle, all chrome and noise, fishtailed onto the pedestrian path, forcing people to scramble. Its rider, a broad-shouldered man in weathered leather, killed the engine near a bench where an old man sat quietly, feeding pigeons. "Move it, Grandpa," the biker sneered, his voice rough like grinding gears. "This path ain't for slowpokes blocking the way." The old man, slight and wearing a worn, faded jacket, didn't react immediately, simply watching a pigeon peck at his outstretched hand. "Didn't you hear me, ancient history?" the biker growled, dismounting. "Get your bony butt out of my way before I make you." He took a step forward, a menacing look in his eyes. Before the old man could even lower his hand, the biker reached out and shoved him hard in the chest. Not a gentle nudge, but a forceful push that sent the old man stumbling back, birds scattering, a small paper bag of crumbs falling to the ground. The old man caught himself on the bench, his face momentarily showing surprise, then settling into a look of profound, quiet sorrow. "Just be mindful of others," the old man said softly, his voice barely audible over the biker's scoffing laughter. The biker laughed again, a harsh, ugly sound. "Mindful? I'm mindful of getting where I need to go, old man. You're in the way," he gestured dismissively. The scene unfolded in mere seconds, but the impact lingered, the sheer casual cruelty, the utter lack of respect. It was a moment that demanded a response, a rectification. Type respect in the comments if you believe everyone, especially our elders and veterans, deserves respect. The old man's name was Harold, 80 years young, though the youth seemed to have been weathered out of him by decades of sun, hardship, and something much heavier than time. He lived alone in a small, tidy apartment not far from the park. His days were simple, quiet. A morning walk, tending to a few potted plants on his windowsill, reading the newspaper with a magnifying glass, and his daily visit to the park to feed the birds. He wore clothes that were clean but clearly old, faded trousers, a jacket that had seen better decades, sturdy but scuffed shoes. His hands, though gnarled with age, moved with a precision that hinted at a past requiring careful work. There was a stillness about him, a deep reservoir of calm that most people mistook for frailty or slowness. They saw only an old man, easily overlooked, easily dismissed. What they didn't see were the eyes, sharp and observant, holding a light that spoke of distant horizons and trials overcome. They didn't see the way he carried himself, an ingrained straightness of posture that age couldn't quite erase. They saw the worn jacket, not the medals it implicitly represented, unseen for decades. Harold didn't complain. He didn't seek attention. He simply lived, a quiet presence in a bustling world that had long forgotten or never knew the magnitude of his contributions. His life now was a stark contrast to the life he had once led, a life of immense responsibility, unimaginable pressure, and decisions that shaped history. But that life was behind him now, folded away like an old flag, remembered only in the quiet moments when the past crept into the present. The biker, whose name was eventually learned to be Rex, was the epitome of loud, entitled youth. Full of bluster and impatience, he saw the world as his personal playground, populated by obstacles, like slow drivers, pedestrians who didn't leap out of his way, and apparently, old men on park benches. He worked at his uncle's garage, spending most of his money on customizing his bike and loud parties. He had a police record mostly consisting of traffic violations and minor disturbances, but nothing serious enough to curb his arrogance. To Rex, Harold was just an inconvenient fixture, a symbol of the slow, outdated world he had no patience for. His friends, who were lounging nearby, chuckled at his little display of dominance. They saw nothing wrong with it, just Rex being Rex. The small crowd that had witnessed the shove muttered disapprovingly, but no one stepped forward. It was easier to pretend they hadn't seen, or that it wasn't their problem. Harold, after regaining his balance, simply bent down slowly, gathering the scattered breadcrumbs. He didn't look at Rex. He didn't say another word about the shove. The sheer indignity of the act, The casual violence against someone so unassuming hung heavy in the air, a silent accusation that only a few seemed to feel. Rex, seeing Harold not retaliate, not even verbally protest beyond his initial soft comment, felt a surge of contempt. "Yeah, that's right, hobble along," he jeered, kicking a few crumbs further away from the bench before swinging his leg over his bike. Just as Rex was about to restart his engine, a police cruiser pulled up slowly, lights off but clearly on patrol. An officer rolled down his window. "Everything all right here?" he asked, his gaze sweeping over the small scene. The parked motorcycle on the path, the scattered crumbs, Harold standing by the bench. Rex immediately puffed up. "Officer, this old guy was blocking the path. I asked him to move and he started getting aggressive. Nearly tripped me," he lied smoothly, gesturing towards Harold. Harold looked up, his expression one of weary resignation. He didn't interrupt. The officer, a young man named Miller, glanced at Harold. He saw the worn clothes, the gentle face, the obvious age. Then he looked at Rex, younger, louder, with a group of friends backing him up. Officer Miller sighed inwardly. Dealing with public disturbances often meant siding with the more assertive party to de-escalate quickly, especially if the other party seemed frail and unlikely to provide a strong counter-argument. "All right, old-timer," Miller said, his tone weary rather than stern. "Why don't you just move along?" Avoid any trouble. Harold's eyes met Officer Miller's. "I was just sitting here," Harold said quietly. "He pushed me," Rex scoffed. "He's lying." Probably senile. Officer Miller hesitated for just a second, catching a flicker of something in Harold's eyes that didn't quite fit the senile old man profile, but then he dismissed it. It was easier to just clear the scene. "Look, sir, just move on. The path is clear now. Let's avoid any further issues." He didn't ask Harold's name. He didn't ask for his side of the story beyond the initial dismissive question. He had already made up his mind based on appearances and who seemed more likely to cause continued disruption. Harold stood straighter, a subtle shift in his posture that went unnoticed by the officer. He looked from Officer Miller to Rex, who was smirking triumphantly. "My name is Harold C. Calloway," Harold said, his voice still quiet, but now carrying an undeniable weight, a resonance that seemed too large for his frame. "I wasn't blocking the path, and he assaulted me." Rex laughed louder this time. "Harold C. Calloway? Never heard of ya, Grandpa. Big important name. Huh? Probably just the guy who waters the petunias at the retirement home." Officer Miller gave a small, exasperated sigh. "All right, Mr. Calloway, let's not make a federal case out of this. Just go home." He was about to close the window and tell Rex to clear the path properly next time when his police radio crackled. A dispatcher's voice, urgent and clipped. "Unit 7, proceed to the old courthouse square immediately. High priority. General Vance en route for unexpected public address. Needs security perimeter, possible media. ETA 5 minutes." Officer Miller's eyes widened slightly. General Vance? The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff? Why on earth would he be coming here, to this quiet town? He looked towards the courthouse square, visible down the street. "All right, everyone," Miller said, his tone shifting to one of hurried authority. His attention pulled towards the unexpected, high-priority development. "Clear the path, Rex. Mr. Calloway, please just go home. We have a situation developing." He didn't wait for a response, putting the cruiser in gear and pulling away towards the courthouse square, leaving Harold, Rex, and the small crowd behind. Rex revved his engine loudly. "See? Nobody cares, old man. Now get lost." He sped away down the path, leaving the smell of exhaust and burnt rubber in his wake. Harold stood alone, the scattered crumbs the only evidence of the kindness he'd intended and the disrespect he'd received. He bent down again, slowly, and began picking up the crumbs, placing them back into the crumpled paper bag. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear or age, but from a deep, quiet hurt. Rex and his friends, eager to see what the commotion was about at the courthouse square, followed at a distance, parking their bikes on a side street. Officer Miller arrived and immediately joined other local officers and a few federal agents who were quickly setting up a security perimeter. A black limousine with tinted windows pulled up, flanked by two dark SUVs. A man in a perfectly pressed army uniform stepped out. His rank insignia gleamed for silver stars. General Maxwell Vance. He was a figure known globally, a face often seen on news broadcasts discussing matters of national security. He was tall, imposing, with an air of quiet authority that commanded attention without needing to raise his voice. Officer Miller, along with the other local officers, snapped to attention, offering sharp salutes. General Vance returned the salute crisply. "At ease, gentlemen," the general said. "Apologies for the sudden notice. An urgent matter requires a brief statement from this location. Maintain a secure perimeter, minimal disruption to the public, please," as the general spoke to the highest-ranking local officer present. His gaze casually swept over the area, the historic courthouse, the park visible down the street, the small knot of curious onlookers already gathering. Rex and his friends watched from their side street, impressed despite themselves by the display of power and authority. General Vance was briefing the local police chief when his eyes stopped. His gaze was fixed on something down the street, near the park entrance. He went silent mid-sentence, his expression shifting from focused professionalism to one of stunned disbelief, then profound respect. The police chief followed his gaze but saw only an old man slowly walking away from a park bench, carrying a crumpled paper bag. "General, is everything all right?" the chief asked, a little concerned. General Vance didn't answer immediately. He took a step forward, then another, his eyes never leaving the figure of the old man. He started walking towards the park, cutting across the grass, his security detail momentarily scrambling to keep up. "General Vance, sir?" The perimeter a federal agent began. "Hold the perimeter here," Vance said, his voice tight with emotion, yet clear and authoritative. I need to speak with that man." Alone, the officers exchanged bewildered glances. That old man? Who was he? Rex and his friends on the side street watched, utterly confused. Why was the general walking towards the park, towards the old man Rex had just shoved? They saw the general approach Harold, who had stopped and turned, alerted by the sudden movement and the entourage. As General Vance drew closer, Harold stood watching him, the crumpled bag held loosely in his hand. There was no recognition yet on Harold's face, only polite inquiry. General Vance stopped a few feet away. The security detail fanned out, keeping a respectful distance. General Vance simply looked at Harold for a long moment, his gaze full of something the onlookers couldn't decipher: awe, reverence, deep emotion. Then, slowly, deliberately, General Vance straightened to his full height and rendered a slow, deep, impeccably sharp salute. "General," Harold said softly, a flicker of recognition in his eyes now, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. It wasn't a question, but an acknowledgement. "Master Sergeant Calloway," General Vance responded, his voice thick with emotion, his salute held unwavering. "It is you," Harold nodded slightly. "It is, Maxwell." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Master Sergeant? Calloway? This frail-looking old man? Rex and his friends stared, dumbfounded. Officer Miller, watching from the edge of the square, felt a chill crawl down his spine. Harold C. Calloway. The name the old man had given him. He hadn't recognized it, but General Vance clearly did. And he was saluting him. Not a casual greeting, but a salute of profound, absolute respect, one general to a master sergeant. General Vance lowered his salute, stepping closer to Harold. "Master Sergeant, I wasn't aware you were in this area. It's been too long." He extended a hand, not for a handshake, but a gesture of profound respect, almost reverence. Harold met his hand briefly. "Just living quietly, Maxwell," Harold said. "The war is long over." General Vance's eyes scanned Harold, taking in the worn clothes, the simple demeanor. His gaze then drifted to the scattered crumbs near the bench, the crumpled bag in Harold's hand. He saw the path, the spot where Rex had parked his bike. He saw the few onlookers, including Rex and his friends, frozen in disbelief. "Sir," Vance began, his voice now shifting, becoming firmer, radiating a quiet intensity that commanded attention from everyone within earshot, civilian and military alike. "Is everything all right here? I couldn't help but notice. Were you involved in some kind of disturbance just now?" Harold looked towards where Rex's bike had been. He sighed softly. "Just a young man in a hurry, Maxwell." A small misunderstanding. General Vance's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked from Harold, the embodiment of quiet dignity and profound history, to where the biker had been, to the scattered crumbs. "A misunderstanding?" Vance's voice was dangerously low now. "Master Sergeant, if someone has shown you disrespect," just then, Rex, emboldened by morbid curiosity and still not fully grasping the gravity of the situation, edged his way closer, wanting to hear what the general was saying to the old man. Officer Miller, seeing Rex approach the general, moved to intercept him, but General Vance raised a hand, stopping him. "This young man, was it?" Vance asked, looking directly at Rex, who flinched under the intensity of the general's gaze. Rex suddenly felt very small, very exposed. The sneer was gone, replaced by a look of confused apprehension. Yeah, I was just, letting him know he was blocking the path," Rex stammered, the bravado draining rapidly from his voice. General Vance turned his full attention to Rex. His posture was ramrod straight, his presence dominating. "Blocking the path," Vance repeated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, yet terrifying in its stillness. "And in the course of this interaction, did you perhaps make physical contact with Master Sergeant Calloway?" Rex's face went pale. He glanced at Harold, then at the general, then back at Harold. He saw the quiet strength in the old man's eyes now, the history written on his face that he had been too arrogant to see before. He saw the general, a man of immense power and authority, looking at Harold with utter respect. "Just sort of nudged him." Rex mumbled, the lie weak and pathetic. General Vance took a step closer to Rex. His eyes were like chips of ice. "You shoved him," Vance stated, not a question, but a declaration. "I saw the crumbs scatter. I saw him stumble. You shoved a man who has earned more respect in his little finger than you will in your entire, insignificant life." The general's voice began to rise, not in a shout, but in a controlled roar that resonated with power and indignation. "Do you have any idea who this man is?" Vance swept a hand towards Harold, who stood calmly, watching the spectacle unfold with that same quiet, sorrowful expression. General Vance didn't wait for Rex to answer. He turned slightly, addressing not just Rex, but Officer Miller, the other officers, his own security detail, and the rapidly growing crowd of onlookers. His voice, now amplified by the sheer force of his presence and the weight of his words, carried across the square. "This man," he declared, his voice ringing with absolute conviction, "is Harold C. Calloway. You called him Grandpa. You called him ancient history. You treated him like a nuisance." He paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. "Harold C. Calloway served this nation for 40 years. 40 years. He enlisted at 17 and retired at 57. He served in Korea, Vietnam, and countless classified operations you will never know about. He was a master sergeant in special forces. Not just any master sergeant. He was a legend. A phantom. General Vance's gaze swept over the stunned faces. He led Mad Dog platoon in the Ia Drang Valley, breaking an enemy siege against impossible odds, saving over 100 American lives. He spent 6 months behind enemy lines after a mission went sideways, evading capture, gathering intelligence, and eventually finding his way back on foot, bringing vital information with him. He pointed at Harold. "He carries scars from battles this country barely remembers, fought in places the public has never heard of. He advised presidents. He trained generations of the military's elite operators, men who are still serving this nation today, carrying the lessons he taught them. I trained under Master Sergeant Calloway when I was a raw, arrogant lieutenant, General Vance's voice cracked slightly with emotion as he looked back at Harold. He taught me about leadership, about courage, about sacrifice, and most importantly, about humility and respect. Everything I am, everything I have achieved, began with the lessons learned from this man. General Vance turned his furious gaze back to Rex, who was now trembling visibly. You shoved a national treasure. You shoved a hero who put his life on the line, again and again, so you could have the freedom to ride your noisy toy down a public path and disrespect your betters. Officer Miller stood frozen, his face ashen. The name Harold C. Calloway, Master Sergeant.
Iadrang.
Suddenly pieces clicked into place. He vaguely remembered hearing stories, whispered legends in the force, about certain veterans living quietly among them. But he had never connected the name to this unassuming old man. Rex's friends had backed away, fear etched on their faces. Rex himself couldn't speak. He could only stare, mouth agape, at the man he had so casually assaulted, and the general who was now crucifying him with words. Officer Miller, General Vance said, his voice regaining its authoritative calm, though the intensity remained. This is assault. Against a civilian, yes, but given the circumstances, against a veteran of unparalleled service. I trust you will handle this appropriately. Officer Miller snapped back to reality. Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. He immediately turned to Rex, his demeanor completely changed. Rex, you're under arrest for assault. Rex didn't resist as Miller cuffed him, his defiance utterly broken. General Vance turned back to Harold, his expression softening completely. The stern general was gone, replaced by the respectful former student. Master Sergeant, he said, quieter now, is there anything at all, I can do for you? After witnessing that, Harold smiled gently. The pigeons are still hungry, Maxwell. And I dropped my crumbs. General Vance's eyes welled up. He bent down without hesitation, uniform be damned, and began helping Harold pick up the scattered crumbs. Officer Miller, after securing Rex in the cruiser, returned and also knelt, awkwardly but sincerely, to help. The scene was surreal, a 4-star general and a police officer kneeling in a park, helping an old man gather breadcrumbs, while onlookers watched in stunned silence. The disrespect had been met with overwhelming vindication, the casual cruelty with profound reverence. Rex sat in the back of the police car, watching, the full weight of his actions crushing him. He hadn't just shoved an old man. He had shoved a legend, a man revered by the highest levels of the military. In the days and weeks that followed, the story spread through the town like wildfire. Rex faced serious charges, the judge influenced by the general's implicit testimony about Harold's character and service. He received a significant sentence, including community service specifically focused on working with veterans organizations. Officer Miller, deeply embarrassed by his initial dismissal of Harold, sought him out, offering a heartfelt apology which Harold accepted with quiet grace. The police department initiated mandatory sensitivity training regarding interactions with veterans and the elderly. Harold's quiet life changed, but not in a way that disrupted his peace. People in town recognized him now, offering smiles, nods, sometimes a quiet, "Thank you for your service, Master Sergeant." The park bench became something of a minor landmark, a place where the town remembered the quiet hero in their midst. General Vance ensured Harold received any support he might need, though Harold asked for little. Their reunion wasn't a fleeting moment. General Vance made it a point to visit Harold whenever he was in the area, sharing stories, two soldiers from different eras connected by a shared history and a bond forged in respect and sacrifice. The story of Master Sergeant Harold C. Calloway is a powerful reminder that true worth is not measured by appearance, status, or the noise we make in the world. It is measured by character, by sacrifice, by the quiet dignity with which we carry ourselves, especially in the face of adversity or disrespect. Harold, the unassuming old man in the park, was a giant, a cornerstone of the nation's defense, a mentor to its leaders. His story teaches us to look closer, to listen harder, and to always offer respect, not just to those in positions of power, but to every individual, for you never know the hidden history the silent battles fought, or the profound value held within the person standing quietly before you. The arrogant biker thought he was strong, asserting dominance over the weak. He learned, in the most humbling way possible, the true meaning of strength and the catastrophic consequences of mistaking quiet humility for insignificance. Master Sergeant Calloway, in his enduring silence and eventual, indirect revelation, taught everyone a lesson that day about honor, service, and the respect that is eternally owed to those who have sacrificed for us all. This is the kind of story that reminds us of the real heroes walking among us. If you were moved by Harold's story and believe in honoring those who've served, subscribe to my channel. Share this video to spread the word about respecting our veterans. And let me know in the comments, what does respect truly mean to you?